Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul?
Jolene, and today we're talking about where to start your adventure.
Right. And I think this is interesting because a lot of GMs like starting the adventures in the action or in media res, right? Because it's really exciting, a gut punch to the gut. And I think it really works for a lot of games, right? Cyberpunk, modern espionage, like where movies start, where everything's already going. You don't even may not know what the movie's about. You may not know the characters, but it starts in the action. Like James Bond is famous for
Mm-hmm.
starting. And you know who the character James Bond is, but if you didn't know he was a spy or a secret agent, it would be an interesting start to the story. But what happens if it's not like that? If you start from the beginning, right? And you don't want to start in the stereotypical, you all meet in the tavern and a bunch of strangers get an ad on the wall, and you go out in the middle of the night or the next day, armed to the teeth, each of you, complete strangers coming from all kinds of different walks of life, even different races. Like one's an elf and one's a
Dwarf.
dwarf, half orc and stuff, and you're just go on an adventure together, even though you guys don't know each other. It's been done. It has been done, and it's been overly done, right? That kind of thing. So a lot of people use different ways to start the adventure, and it seems to me a popular one is to make them prisoners or be somehow captives of some sort. And I think it works, and that sometimes it doesn't work.
I don't really like the idea of starting as a prisoner.
No, the idea is that no, I don't think nobody likes that idea, at least as a player, because you don't have your stuff, right? That's half your character.
That's your idea, right?
That's my personal idea, and I've been in a number of games where that is exactly where it starts, and it's gone well. It started off well, and it started off not so well, and the game both games, actually a number of games, they start off a little different, right? And they end up a little bit differently because there's different players and there's different systems, right? I think some critical mistakes can happen if the GM doesn't give you an idea that that's the way the game's going to go, right? Because some players will be very upset if like you take away their stuff at the very beginning, and you're like, "Yeah, you guys are shackled and working the prison gang somewhere, breaking rocks. Where's my armor? Where's my sword? Oh, well, you don't know, ugh, right?" And then the players like some players will get kind of mad, right?
Upset,
I'm
yes.
upset about that situation.
I didn't really think about not having your stuff. I just, I've heard horror stories about starting the game this
Oh
way.
yes, yes.
So, so I was when Saul said, "Well, what do you think about this?" I'm like, "Ew."
That sounds terrible.
It does. It sounds terrible to me.
Well, yeah, there's some incident. I think it was England. You said I thought it was Gen Con, but I think you're right. It was at a Game Con in England, and the person was really terrible.
Terrible
The
GM.
GM. Well, he was just a terrible GM as far
That's
as
what I said. Anyway,
as far as I remember. But that's not. We're not talking about GMs being terrible. We're
they're
talking about
just how to start the game.
how to start the game and how that might be an interesting start. So I'll start with one incident when we were playing at a con. In fact, every game like this has been at a con. It was like an 18 Horatio Hornblower kind of setting, right? Big ships and stuff, and we're not shipwrecked, but we start off as prisoners on this island, and we're like prisoners of this island, and we're held in cages made out of some sort of bamboo. And there's a wall. I mean, there's a what?
Okay, this sounds like a Conan game.
No,
I
no.
could see that.
This is like Horatio Hornblower. So like, and
Are you on a ship?
no, we're on an island.
Oh, on an
We
island.
were on a ship that the pirates took over, and they dumped us on this prison.
Okay.
And I don't know what if we were going to be set up for sold off to slavery or held ransom. One of my friends, Jonah, was in the game, so I go, oh, Jonah's in the game, and I kind of knew the GM, But I didn't realize, I knew him because he was a con GM, but I never played any of his games. Yeah, and I was excited to play this game because I had just seen Horatio Hornblower with Ifengerfold and Sharp's Rifles with Sean Bean. So I was all into this time period, ready to play, and we were prisoners on this planet, and there was a wooden palisade.
Island, not planet.
I mean, island. Somewhere in the Caribbean, I don't know where exactly, probably. Day by day, we were prisoners on this island. And then a half an hour passes by. He's going day by day. Same thing's happening. Nothing changes. I'm like, so me and Jonah look at each other going, nothing's going to happen. We're just going to sit here until we do something, right? There wasn't going to be a GM, what is it, opportunity. The GM's not going to present an opportunity to us to do something. We figured we had to do something. So we had to do like an uprising, right? We planned an uprising and what we needed to do. And then the game started, literally. Otherwise, it would have been just...
So the GM was giving the players the opportunity to create their own destiny there, right?
Yes, I guess.
He just started you as on a chain gang, and what are you going to do?
Well, we weren't a chain gang.
I'm just saying that.
Thank God. But we were just, they'd take us to go break rocks or something, and then bring us back to this camp or prison. And then...
That's what a chain gang does.
Yeah, and so we're like, what are we doing here? It was really strange. And finally, me and Jonah, the two of us, decided we're gonna have to do something. And it was just a really interesting way that game came about. But we wasted
a half hour
of just listening to the GM tell us our day-to-day grind. We obviously had an uprising and things happened and it got a little crazy. But it was a very slow burn start for me. At a convention, it seemed kind of weird that's the angle that the GM took. Now, Felipe ran Conan, and he ran the Pit of Cthulhu, or whatever it is called, where you also start as a prisoner. Except in this case, you were in a battle, and you're being taken to this pit. So you get taken to this pit, all kinds of weird things, and they're not really nice to you because it is Conan, right? And if you get old and don't do your work, they just feed you to, or kill you and feed you to this giant lizard or something. I forget what it was.
But it's Conan, so you know you got to escape.
So you know you got to get the heck out of there, right? And so right away we started devising a way of trying to get away and trying to figure out what to do. The difference is Felipe gave us presented opportunities for us to do something, right? There was a certain situation.
Because Felipe is a different kind of GM. He wouldn't take a half hour to let you figure it out.
Right.
I mean, he might, but most likely, unless if he presented you the opportunity and you didn't do anything.
You're right. So those are two totally different types of starts. Now, why did I like these games? Well, it makes sense that that's a good way to start a game for characters who are from all walks of life, who don't know each other, but have to work together to get out of the situation that they're in. That makes sense, right? In fact, I just saw an episode of some doctor show where they have prisoners inside the hospital, and these people who don't even like each other, right, the prisoners, are working together to try to escape. That sounds like a prison break to me, right? And it sounds like an adventure for those prisoners. Now, they weren't very nice people, and one of them was kind of just going along to get along, or they were going to kill her or whatever. They were women prisoners of all things. And I think it was very interesting that it kind of represents the idea that people will work together, even if they don't like each other, even if they have hatred of each other, to get out of the situation that they're in. Getting out of a prison or from being jailed or something is a great way of getting characters to work together, even if they don't have any kind of common goals and stuff like that. So it makes sense as a beginning to an adventure or a campaign to start off in that situation.
To you.
To me.
I was researching this topic, and this one guy says
Terrible.
No, he said He said, I know there's a lot of hate for having your character start in prison, but one of my favorite campaigns started that way.
Really?
Anyway, it was a Warhammer 40K
Oh,
campaign,
Jesus.
and everybody had a reason for being in the prison. It was built into their backstory. But he said it was a great campaign, but he had never seen or he had never experienced that before. He wouldn't necessarily want to experience it again, but it was a good campaign.
Well, yeah, I mean, the problem is that unless the players really buy in, then you could have a lot of resentment, right? Taking their stuff that they had planned to have, their armor, their guns, their secret weapons that they have stowed up on their person, and then all of a sudden, as a GM, you say, well, you don't have any of that. You got to find it.
I think it probably depends on the setting. Like I could see it in Conan. I could see that, right? Because that's just the world of Robert E. Howard. So I could understand that. Maybe Sharp's rifles or Horatio Hornblower. I could that time period, but I would have problems with it for other things. I think there's other ways you can start a game that's not a trope.
Okay.
Like instead of going to you're stuck in a prison here. Let's go here. What are you gonna do? You're like, well, I don't have any of my stuff. I don't have my lockpick. How am I gonna get out? I'm gonna have to start bashing people over the head, or
right. And you got to devise a plan to escape, and then go to wherever your stuff is being held. I think Mike even ran a game that way where we were jailed or something, and then we had to go.
I wasn't in that game.
Yeah, I think that was our. I forget what game that was.
Anyway.
And we had to go find our stuff, and then we escaped. I mean, it might have been Jim. It was Jim or Mike. I think it was. I don't remember. But anyway, we had to find our stuff. We were able to get out of the jail cell, and then we rushed around this place. We didn't know where anything was because we weren't from there. And we found our stuff, got our stuff, and then we escaped.
I think there are other ways to start a game to make it exciting for the players. Like I read several of them in Res Media.
Right. That's it.
Starting in Res. Starting in action. This one guy says that you should, maybe there's so there are different ways that you could do that, right?
Right.
You could have a mine explosion next to the town.
Ooh.
Where the players, maybe they are in a tavern, who knows? But all of a sudden there's a mine explosion in the town or in the mine next to the town. Or you could start them off like the ninjas have attacked them on the road.
Oh yeah. I gotcha. Well, you could anything that presents the group in peril. Let's say they're on a Greyhound bus, traveling, and they either get hijacked or a disaster happens, right? Whatever, they crash, things happen. On a plane trip, the plane goes down in the Andes, stuff like that. That could make the characters have to work together to survive, and that's a big motivator for players and characters to do something and work together, even though they may not know each other very well.
Right, so there's other ways you can do it besides having them start as prisoners.
Oh, yeah. That was just one way I was thinking to start, other than in media res, right? Other than in the middle of the action, where are other ways, other than the tavern, that you can get people to work to get the characters to get together and become a team without it feeling forced or fake.
Well, I think that's why a lot of times that's why the session 0 was created, right? So you can have your players know each other. And a lot of games have it built in when you make the characters that you have to have connections to other characters.
Right. Tales from the Loop.
And that's to keep you from having, not Tales from the Loop, but that's in any game, that's to keep you from having to start in a tavern where you don't know each other, right?
Yeah, 11-year-olds in a tavern may not work.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
But it could be in the principal's office, right? Yeah. Like they're all not in jail, but in trouble for something, right? I think, or in detention.
Yes.
Like the Breakfast Club,
yes.
Right? That kind of thing. I think those kind of situations are pretty interesting, and I think they give you, as a GM, the tool to be able to put characters of various backgrounds together for a reason, and the reason is something that the player characters don't want to be in, right? They don't want to be in detention. They don't want to be in jail. They don't want to be stranded on a deserted island. I mean, all those things can bond the characters together to work together and overcome any differences that they might have as far as class.
The tiefling standing next to you.
Yeah. little devil-looking guy. Yes, yeah, exactly. You're gonna work together. Well, you may not like this person, or you might find him scary, but he seems to know something about making a raft. So you're on a deserted island. Well, he's maybe not your best friend, but not your worst enemy at the moment. So I think those kind of situations are a really cool way to start off a game, or even a campaign. Especially, like I said, if you don't want the trope of meeting a tavern, and if you don't have a session zero, right? If you don't have a session zero, although most people will highly recommend them, I think it's a good idea. I have yet to really have a session zero about.
You usually have a session zero, as in you tell people what's going to happen and tell them to make their characters and tell them to make connections with the characters.
Sometimes I do that, or we all make characters together.
Yeah.
And it's not officially a session zero, but there's enough conversations with each other that say, "Oh, we're not going to have, let's say, Shadowrun. We're not going to have 4 street samurais in this game." We're like, "Oh, I'll be this. I'll be that." Nobody has a. We don't have a decker. Well, then we'll have a deck. I'll be a decker. That kind of conversation does happen, even though it's not like planned session zero, right?
Right.
It's just I gather everybody together. Let's make characters together. I mean, that's what session zero is, and naturally everybody just talks to each other.
If you're playing Shadowrun, that's a good idea to have people there to help you make your character, because you're going to get confused part of the time.
I mean, a lot
even
of it,
with a character mancer.
A lot of it is because of that, right? Because the characters are so hard to make that certain people like having other people around to help them make the characters.
Well, a lot of times in Shadowrun, though, you make your characters together, so you know that you know each other, right? You create those bonds as you're making the characters.
Well, for a little bit, a lot of it is just making a character and not wanting to double up on a certain skills.
Yes, but as you're doing that, that's how.
But as
how,
you're doing it,
yeah.
you are talking, going, "Oh yeah, this is a good way to make a character. Oh, we should know each other because of this, and we
Right.
should know each other because of that."
Because of your contacts and stuff
I
like
think
that.
it naturally happens, but I think if people are not used to that, it's good to have like a plan for the GM to say, "Okay, everybody has to have at least one connection to each other."
I don't think Shadowrun is a good game to start people in any kind of prison. I'm just saying right now. And also, you might want to start from the beginning in Shadowrun, where they get a job, because they don't have to be. They're not going to. They may go to a tavern to meet the Johnson to get a job, but they're not going to be. They're most likely going to be wherever they are, right?
Or the Johnson, for whatever reason, hires everybody.
Just on a phone call, right?
Or
not a phone call, a vid call, or
I'm saying is like doesn't even approach a group.
He just approaches one,
individually, all of them, and then they're all forced to work together. That can happen, and I think that makes an interesting job, because like you may not start trusting each other, and you're like, okay, so, but as usual,
as runners, you really want to trust the people that you're working with, though. I'm just saying,
sort of,
because it's a very dangerous game.
Okay, in that sense, yes, but also, I think it's a healthy dose of like, oh, I don't know if I trust this guy. I'll wait to make my decision till later, kind of situation.
Yeah.
Shadowrunners by
definition
are suspicious of everybody. So I think that would make an interesting start to a game. Like I said, anything other than in media res, where everybody starts off together, not knowing each other or forced to be together for whatever reason. Either they're hired by this Johnson to do the job, and you may not even know each other, or you may know each other by reputation, but not really know each other. And you're like, oh, this guy's really good at this.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it's going to be that kind of job, right? Because if there's like no decker, you're like, well, okay, that's an interesting kind of job. Or there's no samurai, right? Or whatever. You're like, oh, that kind of tells you what the job's going to be a little bit more.
I think that Feng Shui is a good game to start in media res.
Yes, of course.
Because that's what the whole game is about, right? It's about action.
That's true. That would be a tougher one to start, like in prison. But if you look at a lot of Asian movies, some of them end up in prison. Look like,
I would go with, I wouldn't necessarily put them in prison, but they could be caught by a triad or
right.
whatever.
But I was thinking like Moromi Must Die. What's his name? Jet Li is in prison and he has to get out, and he goes all the way to San Francisco or Oakland in this case to figure out what's going on and to solve the problem. I think those kind of things, but he's by himself, so it's more like a single person instead of a group entourage. There is the Dirty Dozen. They're soldiers who are in prison, and they're given a second chance to get out of prison if they do this one mission, which is like a suicide mission. Blah blah blah. The Dirty Dozen, fantastic movie. You're talking about a group of people who are together because they're prisoners. They're military prison. If you look at Suicide Squad, the same thing. You're looking at a group of guys and people who are together only because this is your last and only shot to commute your sentence or to get out of prison, which is terrible.
I don't know what you were talking about.
So Inmediate Res is pretty cool. Inmediate Res is pretty cool. I think you're right. It works for certain situations better than starting at the beginning or forcing the players to be together and working as a group. But I like certain things about the starting from the beginning or the prison or was stranded on a deserted island because it really kind of makes the players work together for a reason, a common goal, right? Of course, if you hire them to do a job, that's cool. In media res, usually the action is that they're trying to stay alive, right? They're being chased or they're being shot at and stuff like that. So there's that. But I think depending on how big your group is too, and depending on what kind of game it is, like Shadowrun, I kind of like the idea of in media res, but because the group can be so diverse, that I really like the idea of them, having that game or that session where like everybody gets together and introduces themselves, right? Like kind of like a Mission Impossible, where they introduce the characters in as they come together.
So I think Shadowrun. That's what I said. I think Shadowrun is a good game to start at the beginning.
Yes.
Because maybe you all live in the same apartment building or whatever,
right?
But there's a reason that you are with these people, that you're working with these people,
right?
Because as a runner, you're not going to trust anybody just to do this job with you. You want to know their skills. You want to know what they can do.
That's true.
And you want to know that they're not going to shoot you in the back of the head and take all your stuff.
And take all the money, right? Though that's a healthy dose of suspicion is probably good for any shadow runner, I think. But I think we're starting at, like, I don't even know what to call this.
I think that the next one is if you start in media res. I think that either your characters have already been playing together, like it's like your second campaign or your second session or whatever, or this new adventure, right? And you all know each other.
Okay.
Or you've had a session 0 where everybody has established their connections to each other, because that's much better than you see these people across the street, right? And you might accidentally kill one of the characters because you don't know them if you start in media res, right? Although that could be an interesting thing because you can tell who the people at the table are as they're talking. But
yes, that's true. I think, right. The certain situations, you're right. A second adventure for Shadowrun, definitely possible for immediate res. For Feng Shui, same thing. Immediate res, no matter what.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
I think because it's so based on over the top stuff and chaotic stuff that it excels in that kind of situation. It doesn't work too well for like Tales from the Loop where you're kids.
Yeah, no.
And stuff like that, because you want...
That's the kind of game you need to start at the beginning.
Right, because you want to establish characters and you want to establish the connections to each other in a big way, right?
I could see in Tales from the Loop, though, them sitting in the principal's office or being in detention versus being a prisoner somewhere. But that is the kind of thing, right? They're in detention, right. Or they're in they're all sitting in front of the principal's office waiting to be talked to.
Right, and they're all like looking at each other. Classic Breakfast Club. It makes me. Though I don't expect a Breakfast Club adventure, but that's where you meet, and that's where and for some reason, the person in charge, the adult, has to go to the bathroom, and so that gives them the opportunity to talk to each other. Like, what are you in for? The one time I was in detention, I was with a bunch of miscreants, and like they're looking at me going, "What are you doing here?" I mean, they knew right away.
He's not one of us.
Right, like I guess a prisoner, right?
I was never in detention and would never be in detention, and they would look at me like something really bad happened if I was in detention.
Well, I'm not gonna say why I was in detention, but I was thoroughly wrongly accused, and I was
And you wouldn't rat anybody out.
I was profiled, right? Anyway, so I think that situation was interesting because you're right. I was the odd man out because I was very preppy when I was in high school. I hate to say it. I used to wear sweaters and slacks and stuff where everybody was wearing jeans and T-shirts and stuff like that. And that's just the way I was. So when I walk into detention, and these people were like total losers. I mean, come on. And I'm like, they're like immediately, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to talk about it." And I never did. And they're like, well, it was really, and it was kind of like a game, right? It was kind of like, what is this guy doing here? What did you do? I pissed off the wrong people. Yeah, duh. Right? It was interesting that I was in that situation, but everybody knew each other in that situation, right?
Right.
That group
Right.
in detention. Hey, Fred. Hey, Marv. It's like those two sheepdogs clocking in. And I was the odd person out. So that's another way of starting a game, introducing a strange character into a group that is like already settled.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a pretty cool way. When I dreamed up of this episode or this topic, I was thinking mainly of just prison, right? Prison breakout, and why those games tend to be pretty cool for me that I've run in and played in. And even when the play started kind of slow, mainly because the GM was like, hands off, you're going to do whatever you're going to do. I'm like, I didn't get it, right? Half an hour later, me and Jonah look at each other going, okay, this is going to be a boring game unless we do something. So that's when we did something. And that's what I guess that's what the GM was going after. Because after that, we just started doing crazy stuff. And Felipe, he always gives you that in the Conan one, they give you an opportunity to do something, right? You see, I forget what it was, but you see one of the jailers is like not paying attention or something, or he gives you opportunity to get his weapon.
Well, Conan is a dangerous world, so if you're
brutal world too.
and you're going to get sold as a slave or fed to something, right?
Yes.
So
sacrificed.
So there's not a lot of options, and you're going to need to get out of the situation. But that's Conan, right?
Right.
That one I can see without.
And that's a high pressure situation, right?
Yeah.
Because the longer you stay in that situation, the worse it's going to be.
Right.
And so when an opportunity presents itself,
you take it.
You pretty much take it,
Yeah.
right?
And you know that the other prisoners around you are going to take the
yes,
same
because they're in
opportunity.
the same boat. And if there's any, I mean, there was like a few people that have been there really a long time, and they were ready to die, right? Like, I'm like, I barely can walk. I'm like, you don't want to end up like that, right? Because that's what's going to happen.
Right.
So there's a high motivation to get out of there. It's not like, well, after 10 years or 5 years or whatever, I got to get paroled. So I just get along to do along or whatever.
It's game specific or like
situations.
Well, I think it depends on the game you're playing, right?
I see what you're saying. Yes.
I guess you could come up with any idea for any game, but I don't think it would be as good, right? As like if it's a modern game and you're in a jail cell, it's going to be kind of hard to get out of, right? Unless you're in a prisoner transport, right? That's basically the only way.
Yeah, The Fugitive.
Something.
There's all kinds of movies. I mean, I remember this one movie. Actually, it was a TV show. Man, I don't remember the TV show. That movie. But everybody started off as they don't even know. You start off with not knowing anything. You don't have no memory, but you wake up.
Yeah, that's what I wouldn't want to go for like in a role playing game.
Like Cold Storage, right? You all wake up more or less at different intervals, and because they don't know their background, they don't know their name. They refer to each other by the first. You're the first. You're number one because you're the first one that woke up, and number two, and they refer to the numbers as 1 through 8.
Yeah.
It was a very
I
cool
wouldn't
show.
want to play in that game.
It was a very cool show. I thought it was a very interesting beginning. I think that's one way you can start a traveler game or a science fiction game. Or even an alien game where, like, what's going on? Well, you don't know. You're just flying on the ship.
No, I wouldn't want to be in that game.
And you slowly
Not an
regain them.
alien game. I'd be the whole game. I'd be going, which one of them is the alien gonna pop out of?
Okay, so, but I thought it was. I think those kind of situations can be very interesting, and you character build from there. You make what is it?
Okay, I'm
bonds
gonna
with
have to
your
start
characters.
making sure I do a session 0 with you, so I know what kind of game you're gonna run, whether I want to play it or not.
Well, I always explain. I give you a little. What is it? A description about my game that I'm running. Even when you go to conventions, right? When you go to conventions, there's a little blurb that it describes your game.
Well, in those games that you played with in Felipe's Conan game, did it say you were gonna start in prison?
I think so. I think so. Yes.
And in the game that you played with Jonah?
I don't remember that. It's been a long time.
Okay.
It's been like 15 years
Okay, just wondering.
at least. Jonah, if you're out there, if you remember, tell us what game that was and when. It was at Kubla Khan, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't remember. And it was pre-pandemic. I know that much. So I think this way of getting characters together and being in a situation that could be high stress makes them more together is a really good idea. And I think it's a good way to start the game. I really like it. I know you're kind of suspicious of it. You have to just trust the GM is not there just to to torture you, right?
Yeah.
Or your characters, I should say.
Yeah.
You're a little bit more suspicious.
If I went into the game now, if I went into the game knowing this was the way it was going to start,
Yes.
then I would be okay with it.
Okay. You wouldn't want this sprung on you.
No.
No. Okay.
I would be doing my X card going, no, I need to leave now.
It's not a game for me. Bye. Okay, that's totally reasonable, right? And I think if you're gonna run a game like that, you should warn the players because, like I said, if a player, you could bring your character. Okay, all right, cool. You get there. Oh, I'm taking all your stuff, and you're basically in a loincloth or a shift of some sort. That's all you got. Oh, and you're chained to a ball and chain. Okay, that's bringing something like this on a group. Probably not the best idea.
That's what I'm
Not the
saying.
best
That
idea.
is exactly what I'm saying.
Yes, I would say I would definitely tell the players before they even sign up or get on board or anything like that this is the way it's going to start, and maybe give them a little background on why you want to start it that way, but definitely warn the players that this is the type of beginning that that's gonna happen, because like I said, a lot of players make a character. They're invested in their character, and they like the stuff that they have. Whether it's you're playing a Warhammer
40K.
Dark Heresy game, or you're 40K, or you're playing a modern game, or you're playing a Monster Hunter game, Supernatural, or you're playing a D&D game. People like their stuff. They're outfitted with stuff because
That's the way they want to face the world.
that's the part of their character, right? And when you take away that, they're like, man, you're really hampering me and being the character that I want. Which is weird because then if you take the stuff away from a sorcerer, you're not taking anything away from them, right? A lot of people, they have components, but a lot of people dismiss components now. And the whole verbal and sign thing, well, if you could talk and you can move your hands, you could
And you can find some dust.
some good back guano. And and of course you stick it in your shorts or something. You always have back guano somewhere to be able to throw your your what's it?
That's disgusting. Okay.
What's the spell? The magic missile. You got to have magic missile. And as a sorcerer, you don't have to have all that stuff, right? You just throw spells because you can.
As a sorcerer, yeah. There are spells do have components, but
A lot of people don't even bother with those anymore.
well, when you make your character, you could just I don't know. Yeah, you would have some kind of an amulet or something that had your stuff in it.
Oh yeah, like I said, like a little pouch somewhere.
Yeah.
Hidden, of course.
Well, yeah, because you wouldn't want anyone to take it away from you.
Yeah. Even if you get captured, you would have to be thoroughly searched to find your stuff. So anyway, taking stuff away from a sorcerer is they don't feel that violated, right? Because they're like, oh yeah, I can still blast you.
Well, and a fighter could punch you, right?
That's true. That's true. But if they have armor on and they take it away, so those kind of things really might upset a player. So warn them if you're going to plan to run this kind of game where they start off not having their stuff.
Or you could set them if they're on a ship, they can see their stuff, or if they're
Yeah.
they're in a closet, they can.
Or they show them where it is, right?
Well, yeah.
Like let's say they lead them into the ship.
Yeah.
They take their stuff off and they put it in a crate.
Yeah.
So you know where that crate is. Okay.
So that's where you're going first.
Right. Right. You know the keys to the car is okay. So I think this is a very interesting topic, and I think it's a very interesting way to start off a game from both a player perspective and a GM perspective. And as long as the GM is fair and isn't doing it to punish players or anything like that, I think, and you can trust the GM. I think this is a really excellent way to start a game off. I know you don't agree.
Good luck.
Good luck.
So there you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.